Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the last episode of Talking Landscape Photography for 2021. It's been a fantastic year. There's been plenty going on, and we thought that we would have an episode just to wrap up the year, go over some of the highlights, some of our own personal highlights even, and what we've been able to photograph across the year and the experiences that we've had. Also the amazing guests that we've been able to have, and thanks some very special people that have really made everything that we do possible on this show. So gents, welcome to the last episode. It's been a very, very big year.
On you, Lukey. Yep, it has been a big year, and we're excited to talk about it and just wrap it up, and we'll have a look back over what episodes we've covered during the year and some of the highlights from that. Obviously, we can't mention every episode because we'll be here until Christmas next year, but we're sort of scrolling through it before on the YouTube page, and look, what a fantastic selection of guests and content we've had over the year. It's just a massive highlight reel, the whole thing, and we're very grateful for the guests that have given their time to come on the show, and we'll talk a bit more about that as we go on. And welcome, Paulie.
Yeah, it's been a big year for all of us on this planet. It's a very interesting time to be alive. It's no more or less significant a time to be an image maker. You know, in some ways, a lot of us have had less physical capacity to get around, but in some ways, we've upskilled and learnt to have more of a voice in other ways. I think and the connections between the photographic community have grown. I think probably a lot more than they even have in the past when people are free and open, because there's so much online sort of connection going on, and even just a show like ours, we've managed to create all these connections with photographers all around the world, around the country, around Australia, and that's been a real privilege and a gift. And I think that's been happening all around the world. And I actually think, like, over this whole COVID period of a couple of years or however long it hangs out, it is reshaping the community a little bit. And in some ways, I think it's making it closer. And I'd like to think in some tiny way that we're lucky enough to be part of that process, and also personally lucky enough to be included in that sort of conversation. And that was the original intention of the show, really. Like, we knew people were doing it hard. We didn't know what was going to happen. There's a lot of uncertainty. People were quite fearful and feeling a bit alone and isolated. And let's kind of create a conversation to keep what we do alive and to support the people that are going through issues of grief or loss or restriction at the very least about doing what they love. And it surprised all three of us that show 72 last night from the original 6. And to be honest, we've still got a lot of steam in the tank and a lot of people we want to connect with. And I think, me personally, now I wake up sort of every week thinking, geez, what are we going to do the next couple of weeks? And I just think, well, who in the world am I incredibly inspired by? Who in the world do I want to learn from? What's a genre I know nothing about? And I've actually, because we've got a little bit of legs on the show, I don't feel less shy about reaching out to some of the greatest in the world and say, how about it? And then I get to put them on the spot and ask them anything I want. It's freaking amazing. And I've learned a lot, and I'm quite impressed with the three of us, with our different lifestyles. I think in a different universe, before COVID, there's no way Luke and I would ever be able to do a regular live show in the known universe. Sometimes I'm on the road 6 or 9 months a year. So that's kind of also part of what's created this happenings. The way the world's different has allowed us to actually have a voice and be present. So yeah, it felt really appropriate to finish the year by sort of reflecting on that and honoring that. And we've had a lot of amazing people that have absolutely just purely gifted their time. I mean, we have too, but at the same time, we had some world-class guests this year who have given a lot of their IP and their personal knowledge and inspiration and technical ability, and they've laid that out for everyone as a gift, really. And that deserves to be honored.
Definitely. Maybe we could quickly just bring up a screen just showing some of the episodes that we have gone through this year, and sort of discuss what we've been up to. Just taking a look now at this screen.
The first thing that comes up for me when I see the screen is we have a very big thank you to make to our very good friend Dex Douwer Dijkstra. He's incredible photographer in his own right, and he's just actually republishing some of his black and white books. He's one of the best black and white photographers in the country, I reckon, at the moment, is particularly in an urban and street context. And he just uses his phone. And he really, but he does it so artfully. His sense of timing is just phenomenal, and such a simple post process as well. And he creates very significant bodies of work, in particular around the culture of Sydney. And that's been recognised at quite a high level now, as it should be. And I have a feeling his work's going to be quite present in terms of reflecting on the culture of a city for a long, long period of time. And that's quite a legacy to have. So Dex has totally volunteered his time, and he's incredibly efficient and sharp and amazing. So many of these images are actually chosen by Dex personally, where we're like, hey, we've got this photographer, and he will go out and he will find the best image, and he will give a selection of 7 on almost no notice in and around the work he's doing. And huge shout out to him.
Yeah, there's actually a bit of a process behind the thumbnail selection. So I'm sure Dex actually really enjoys it, because he gets a chance to go through some photographers' portfolios and really pour through the images, and also, I guess, ultimately select an image that actually really works with the graphic, because obviously where the text is placed, and we've got the icon on the top right to say what the episode number was, we sort of need to find an image that fits in with that too. So and often, it turns around really quickly, and normally we're all very, very last minute. So it's very good that we've got his support, and I think the graphics certainly help to really give the photographer show off their skill very well, just even in that one graphic. So yeah, and
there's another skill again, is like, how do you choose a photograph that, one, is in landscape format, and 2, actually fits text and doesn't interfere with the conversation the image is having. That's quite an art form.
And then having to deal with Paul and myself and Nick and all of our squabbles all the time.
That one. That's too yellow. What about this?
Yeah,
I like that one.
Yeah,
so we have a bit of a voting, and it's often 2 to 1, and or there's chop and changing with a few conversations. It is a bit of a dance, but it's
also really exciting too, because during our show break, Dex is actually coming down to Tasmania, hopefully, COVID willing, and we'll actually get a chance to hang out and spend some time with him as well. So yeah, thank you so much, Dex. Certainly a very dear friend of ours, and very, very much a silent member of our group, our show, and we very much do appreciate all you do for us.
Yeah, thanks, Dex. I just wanted to say as well that that this show is a team of 4. It's not a team of 3, and Dex is the 4th member. And so, thank you very much. All the fantastic graphics that you've done, all the work that you've put in, and being a militant graphic designer really helps, because you certainly pull us into line with what works and what doesn't work. And I think just looking at the graphics here, you can see perfectly well that Dex knows what he's doing in terms of capturing a great image for the show.
It's probably worth mentioning as well, and we have in previous episodes, that Dex is a professional graphic designer, and he loves working with photographers. So if you have a logo that you'd like to design, or a book that you're even looking to make, or different bits and pieces, I don't know about his availability, but it's very well worth getting in touch with him, and you never know, you might be able to work with him as well, which I highly recommend. He's very, very efficient and very good to work with. So,
okay, where's the best way to actually access one of Dex's books if you want to purchase one?
I think he's selling them through his website, or you could just send him a direct message on Instagram or Facebook as well. I think what's his Instagram. Dower, I can't even remember his Instagram account.
That's why I thought I'd better check.
Yeah, but we can put some.
But I know he's just publishing another 50 of another set right now, I think.
Yeah, no, his book's amazing. On the black and white mobile photography from Sydney, it's even got the Mayor Clover Moore doing the forward for the book. So he's very switched on in that regard. So could wax lyrical about Dex all day, but we do have other things to talk about. But thanks again, Dex. Our show started
31. Was that this year's first?
Yeah, the first one this year was a planning show.
Planning, yeah.
And that was really good for me to talk about planning because it's a big passion of mine. And I actually did run some planning photography workshops later in the year. Really want to do the same next year, and even have a course that people can actually purchase on demand.
That was on the Sony platform, Luke, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was on the Sony Scene platform, but
Yeah.
ultimately I'd like to make anyone could have joined in, so I'll probably do it so you can book in from my website or you can book in from Sony Scene. I get an advantage booking through Sony Scene, so that's why I like to do that and also do something for those guys. But yeah, definitely something I'm keen to do more of, and I guess a lot of the course information was actually brought up during that episode. So if you want a free course, then that's probably not a bad way of doing it. And it's probably goes to the same of a lot of the guests, as Nick was saying, or Paul was saying, in terms of giving away IP or talking about aspects about photography on this show. There's a lot of free information available on our episodes. And I think the second episode, or the episode after that, with Joe Cornish, I think quite agreed was one of our favorites. So if there's an episode, especially if you're looking into what UK photographers are all about and creative process, it's just a very eloquent show. Joe's an incredibly good presenter, and yeah, I think it's a pretty unanimous. It's one of our favorite shows, so it's definitely well worth visiting that show if you have some time. Yeah, just the quality of the guests that we've got through here with Tom, Jeff Murray. We had beautiful chat with Tara and Jared from the US, who were brilliant.
So Jared he's made a bit of a splash. So he's jumped into the NFT world with a bit of a bang, and I think his kind of almost futuristic, super contemporary, modern approach to image making has really struck a chord, and I think it sits in that platform really beautifully. And that's one of the big things for 2021, really. I mean, who knew about NFTs a year ago? I certainly never heard of it. And some photographers on the show and have embraced it and are really getting in there. And I've been sitting on the fence. Luke and I've talked about it a fair bit. I may go there at some stage. I was sort of just got the jury out a little bit. At the same time, I think it's here for the future, and it's just going to be up to us with the integrity and the authenticity of how we approach that sort of medium personally and professionally. And that's going to be an ongoing conversation. We've actually tried to get somebody in just specifically to speak about NFTs, because I think it's something we should do next year, really, as the dust settles a little bit and we get a bit of a sense of when it's grounded and where it can actually go to for the future, and the different pros and cons of how we want to approach it.
Yeah, and Eric's recent episode with Eric Bennett, we sort of broached the subject, and I actually did get some direct feedback from people saying that there was a interesting point of view that Eric has, and I certainly quite identified with how he was speaking about NFTs in terms of just waiting, like not acknowledging that it probably will be a thing going forward, but not having to feel like he needs to rush into it and wants to do it with a bit of dignity and grace, perhaps. And so that was quite an interesting take on it. So that's something we have covered so far, but I've got a few ideas on who we can have on next year, but it's certainly something that we need to tackle and talk about. And I think we've probably all three of us have a similar point of view around NFTs in terms of being a bit more softly, but maybe Nick's more like, get away from me, Satan. But we're
I'm not quite. Look, NFTs have their issues, and there's no doubt about that. And but they're also incredibly beneficial for photographers from certainly a financial perspective at the moment. Whether that remains the case in terms of how lucrative they can be to some people that are able to market themselves, but. Look, I haven't really delved into it enough. I'm not on Twitter, where I think there's quite a lot of activity about NFTs, and there's been a lot of criticism about people, pumping themselves up to sell their work as an NFT and that sort of thing. And there's a great episode on NFTs on Matt Payne's F-Stop Collaborate and Listen that's worth a listen. And yeah, definitely something we should tackle in the future. And just see where the landscape lies.
So just in terms of the future, like, this is actually a really good opportunity for our audience to reflect on who we've had, who we haven't had, what they would like next year? Any particular guests that they feel like they really would like to see, or topics that we haven't covered yet? It'd actually be really good to get feedback. I just realized we haven't done that for a while. We did a survey
now
about
that
a
you
year ago,
mentioned
did we,
it, Paul,
Loki?
I think it was similar time last year we actually sent out a survey. So I think it'd be really good to do that again and just get some ideas and some feedback and kind of work out, you know, the best things forward. I think one of the bits of feedback was the show was a bit long. So we reeled it into an hour and a half, and I think now all our episodes are back to 2 hours again. But it's just
they're not 3 or 3.5 though. Like
that's sort of like a sorry not sorry kind of a response on that one, I think, because you know, often we start our shows going, oh wow, you know, 2 hours sounds like a lot, and then you're at the 1.5 hour mark where we like thinking about wrapping up, and there's still so much to cover, and I guess sort of still just frothing as well. So but yeah, no, so that's one thing that will always probably be a factor with our shows, but that's just so we can cover as much quality info as we can.
Look, I'm just going to give a quick shout out to one of the opportunities we have with a show like this is not only can we reach out to really revered and long-standing people in the photographic community, but we can actually showcase young up-and-comers. And somebody like Tim Cooper was really special for me personally. I've worked with Tim on conservation campaigns in the Tscharke and the Bob Brown Foundation for quite a few years now, and he's young, but he's talented and he's committed, and he puts himself on the line like few people I know to do what he believes in. And I just, yeah, and he's continued to do so even more so since the show, and he's branching out into video and audio, and he's really making a bit of a splash and letting the voice of some really significant issues sort of come to light through his gifts. So shout out to you, Tim. Keep up the good work, brother.
And we also had Ben Mays on as well, talking about sort of up and comers and young photographers as well. And Ben's definitely an up and coming young photographer himself, so that's some really good youth episode there.
Yeah, he really brought to light a lot of young photographers that I didn't know about, whose work is really quite astonishing. And I think, you know, if you're getting a bit old and tired in your work or losing a bit of inspiration, just being around them and their work is really refreshing. So I recommend, and I've certainly got a bit of work to do. I actually, after that episode, I actually made a point of like, I actually want to look up some of these young comers and see, because I think we can get a little bit in our path as we get on, and sometimes it's good to just stop and sit back and say, hey, what's a fresh and young approach to what we're doing in terms of not only just technique but attitude and style, and I think it's good to keep yourself open and refreshed like that.
Yeah,
and Ben's definitely part of that generation for sure.
He's also coming over to Tassie over the New Year period, so I'm hoping that I can catch up with him when he's down, and a couple of his mates who are also very capable photographers or who got a mention on his episode. So that should be quite cool. For me too, I just wanted to call out a couple of episodes that I really particularly enjoyed. I mean, they're all very enjoyable, but I really, I've always wanted to do an Aurora episode, and having James Stone on, who in my opinion is one of Australia's greatest Aurora photographers and astrophotographers, was a fantastic episode. And also then we followed that up with bioluminescence with my friend Fraser. And those two episodes together are two of the most interesting things to photograph, certainly at night, going around. And Fraser's episode also we haven't really had many where we've had an external person just pop in for a bit of a chat, and we had a professor from Queensland who's an expert on glowworms jump on and actually talk about that. So that was a really fascinating episode. Unfortunately, we did have to trim out some of the sequences of that because of copyright issues. Basically, Fraser showed some of his footage that he took, but because it was in a David Attenborough film, they saw that it was kind of copyrighted content, and so that we had to remove that for the episode to come back online. So, but very fascinating episode, and I guess it was a really interesting time because then the show after that we had Peter Dombrovskis special, which I'm sure all of us would agree was one of the highlights of the whole show that we've ever run, because we've been talking about that since the show started.
Yeah, and we picked the 50th for that reason. It seemed like a very appropriate episode to really put standing to one of the greats.
Absolutely.
Nick's soliloquy at the beginning is like nothing I've ever seen. It was just this non-stop half hour, just accolade to the man that I've never heard anybody speak so beautifully and eloquently all in one go. Nick, that was I just sat there just whoa.
Oh, thanks, mate. Look, yeah, I mean, it was pretty obvious to anyone watching that Peter's work is extremely important to me, but it's extremely important to all of us and many, many people out there. And it was just an honour to have the guests that we had on during that show to celebrate Peter's legacy. And complete, for me, obviously the highlight of the year. But there've been so many other fantastic highlights along the way as well. And just mentioning it again, we already mentioned it once, but Joe Rainbow's presentation of Cornwall and his work was a real standout for me. And it was, I haven't obviously watched the show back, but I remember at the time the discussion that we had between the three of us after the show, just raving about how well Joe is able to articulate his thoughts on art and photography. And it's, if you haven't watched that show, then I absolutely recommend it. For me, it was one of the highlights.
You should really consider having him back, Nick, as well. Maybe another topic.
Absolutely, yes, we'll definitely have Joe
please.
back. I'm sure he would be more than happy to come back on, but it was just the way he was able to articulate his ideas just really spoke to me. And it certainly helps. I think that Joe is an arts teacher, and I think that's part. His skill is there for all to see on our show. And on that same note, actually, we had Len Metcalf on. What episode was that?
Number 54.
Yeah, and in a very similar way, Len was able to articulate ideas around photography.
Also being a professional educator.
Yeah, and that stands out in terms of being able to articulate ideas. I mean, I come back to this all the time, that I carry on like this, and I'm trying to say something and I can't really get the words out, but people like Joe and Len are able to just really bring their ideas into sharp focus and then be able to present it to us so well. And
it's a good show when you watch it and then you just can't wait to get out and take photos. And when both of those guys spoke, I very much felt that. And Joe had me like reaching for my tilt shifts and getting those out and getting back into that. And Len just had me really look more, putting some restrictions on what I do and really thinking much more clearly about what I'm trying to achieve and not letting color be a distraction, but looking at the form of the photo and things like that. So definitely great we're very privileged to be able to have all of this information thrown our way, and we're forced to watch every episode in that sort of sense, and not that it needs to be forced, but we're getting all of that information. And so it's certainly, even though we're devoting our time, there's definitely a huge benefit to us in terms of what we're learning and understanding from these amazing photographers.
Absolutely. And we're lucky to have such a variety of things that we've been able to present. I mean, it goes from specific geographic areas of the place that we love and live in, Tasmania, which may not be relevant to someone watching from the United Kingdom so much, but it's great that we're able to take this show in our own direction, so we can focus on something that's very local to us and we enjoy so much ourselves.
Yeah, and just on that note, sorry to interrupt, Nick, but if you are going to come to Tassie for a trip, it is worth noting, and we probably should create a playlist for all the Tassie shows that we've had. But if you're wanting to go to the northeast, we're wanting to go to the Tasman Peninsula, Bruny Island. Where else have we got here? Tscharke here too, shows on the Tscharke. So there's actually some really great resources, and without
Luke's last show was mainly on the southwest,
to really find a more detailed resource on some of those locations as well. So don't
obviously we've done our best to present them with sensitivity to the areas themselves as well.
Yeah. Flinders Island as well. We've left heaps of space for you to find your own photos, of course, and didn't give too much detail away in terms of direct location links there. But I guess the point there is that there's plenty to take in there in terms of understanding Tasmania and different things and places to see in very specific regions that maybe people hadn't considered in the past. Often when you travel, it's all about the big icons and nothing much more about the other areas, but there's actually plenty of amazing little places that don't get the same kind of love as some of the others, which is probably not a bad thing, but it's worth noting.
I watched back the Tasman episode because that's one I missed. I jumped in just on the last 5 minutes live because I was working, but that was a real opener for me. It was like, oh yeah, I've been here for 22 years and I know most of the nooks and crannies, and I just went, oh, actually, I don't know the Tasman Peninsula anything like I thought it did, especially after watching where Nick Munkin got to, and I was scratching my head at half of them going, I still have no idea where they are, and I haven't even asked Nick because I'm almost embarrassed. But it was a testament to just the detail you can go into in this landscape we are in Tasmania. There are so many convoluted, hard to get to, incredible nooks and crannies in this island. It's unbelievable, and that personally was a good reminder to me that is very much the case. And there's no excuse to be saying I've been there, done that, I can't get fresh work in this landscape in particular. It's almost unlimited, really. And someone like Martin Hawes opens up areas and places that few human beings will ever get to, ever. And I personally believe he has been places that no human being ever has and maybe ever will. And that's requiring, we're talking 10, 12, 15-day trips on over like heinously untracked, incredibly difficult terrain and dangerous weather and lots of solo trips. And not only the physicality of it, but Martin does it with a depth of purpose and intention like few people do. And being an incredible writer as well, and probably a philosopher at heart, he has a way of tying all those three together, which is really quite a legacy for conservation. He has a very big voice and works very hard to involve himself at a policy and political level for positive affirmations about areas of conservation and definitions of wildness and things that few people have the capacity to tackle with the grace that he does and the integrity that he does. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, that's an episode I'd run past. And in terms of variety, I feel like Serena is a really good friend of the show, and Nick and I particularly had seen her new architectural work, and we were like, oh my goodness.
Yep.
And she literally just got invited to an incredible show in Germany just last week that she's just come back from, I think, seeing Iceland. And I've actually seen some of the raw photos, raw images of these. And it is very much her particular unique, specific vision and craftsmanship that has created this body of work in a way that no one else would really likely to be able to reproduce. And she's done it very successfully and with incredible international appeal.
Yep.
That's very capable. You speak about that, Nick.
Oh, it's an incredible body of work from Serena, and just the amount of planning that's obviously gone into those shots. She knows. It goes back to our planning episodes, I suppose, where you work things out. But just getting the sun and the moon and all those things lined up with buildings, and then getting the right perspective from a focal length point of view, from a technical aspect, it's quite outstanding, the work that she's done. But from an aesthetic aspect, it's just next level. And it's some of the best architectural photography I think I've ever seen, to be honest. And wow. It really is worth watching that show. And if you don't follow Serena on social media, then you definitely need to, because it's just superb work.
And lovely human too.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. I wanted to also acknowledge we've had a lot of repeat guests, actually. I guess we could say friends of the show that have come on. And as I'm looking through this list here from this year, there's a lot of people that came back from the year before or have even been on multiple times this year. You've got guys like Tom Putt, who's possibly one of our most frequent guests, and it's always an absolute joy to have Tom on the show. Such a gentleman.
Always says yes.
He always says yes. He's always keen. He'll even drive all the way to his gallery and do the show from his gallery and things like that. So very, very much honor. Tom joining us. Matt Palmer has also been a huge feature in our shows as well. And Matt's a very dear friend of ours. And we really, every time Matt's on the show, it's a very enjoyable show. So
we miss having him in Tasmania.
Yeah, I know. Well, we need to get some more Matt time in.
So, big shout out to Matt and Mika both, because Mika's also one of our recurring guests that has honoured us beautifully, and I look forward to giving her own voice as the first show of the year.
Yeah,
but those two have been working their absolute tushes off to open their Alpine Light Gallery in Bright, and they're hoping to open before Christmas. And I don't think there's a lot of sleep going on. There's a lot of sore bodies and empty wallets, I think, in terms of the commitment they're putting into creating it. And to have two of the best in the country come together like a team like that is really inspiring for a lot of us, and really, really wish them the absolute best.
Yeah, how exciting is it to have two of the best landscape photographers in the country opening a gallery together? I don't do a lot of travel, but I'll certainly be heading to Bright to see that gallery as soon as I'm able to. And,
that'll be magnificent.
And in terms of really appreciate Mika and Matt's efforts with our show as well. They've both been on multiple times and just presented beautifully. And yes, Mika will be back for our first show of 2020.
January the 12th, everyone. So make sure you tune in then. It will be most likely a live show as well. So that'll be good fun. In terms of other repeat guests to acknowledge, Rob Mullally's come on a second time here. Also, we've had Simon, Grant and Rob come back on for the Dombrovskis special. We've had Scott Patel on a few times this year. It was really awesome to have Scott on just after he won the Australian Geographic Nature Photographer of the Year competition and talk a bit more about that. So that was a real honour to have him involved.
His underwater show was spectacular.
And that was unfortunately one I missed, so I really do need to jump back. And same with the Serena one. So
it's so different from the rest of the work that we've covered over a year and a half, 2 years. It's quite a standalone show, really, Scott. And he's continuing to win awards all around the world and do amazing conservation work. And he's finally free. I remember I did a trip with him for a week or 10 days, and he was umming and ahhing about whether he stayed up north or went back to Sydney to see his partner, and worried about his getting stuck. And at the last minute, he went back and he probably spent 6 months not being able to do anything, and partly as a result. So the poor guys went through it, because he's not a homebody, that's for sure. But he's already been racing out there, making the most of it already. I also want to thank Tony Hewitt for coming on the show, double Grandmaster and one of the most awarded photographers in Australia, and for very good reason. It took a while to get him on, and I'm really grateful that we had someone of his eloquence and caliber. And if you're looking for a really sense of ideation and the thought process behind creativity, and maybe some of the more bigger picture concepts around how to approach photography from a landscape perspective, it's a wonderful show to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. And then my dear friend Jay joined us for another time talking about Uluru, which is probably one of my most favorite places in the planet as well. And Jay previously did a show on Blue Mountains, and so it was lovely to have him back on the show to talk about Cartagena, and probably one of the best people to talk about, given that he's also a qualified guide down there as well as a workshop partner to myself, running workshops at Uluru. So that was also very cool. And then coming up in the back here, we've had quite a few international guests having. It was amazing to meet Matt Payne and have such a great chat, and we had quite a lovely chat after the show as well.
We did.
And also obviously Alex and Tim for the natural ones, Eric Bennett here and Alex. So we have had quite a nice little international contingent at the back end of this year, and hoping to have a lot more international guests next year as well.
Eric, in case you guys didn't know, he's come back to me twice and said, when are we doing part 2? So he's definitely keen to come back, and he's a very very committed man. Like he's one of those people that will do like 140-mile backcountry hikes to try and get to places that few people do, and offer nature a really pure voice And I think that's getting harder to do in the world. He's one of those people that's committed to doing it.
It was pretty gobsmacking when he brought up that map showing all of the walks he did, similar to Alex in the episode we just had, just showing all of the different hikes they've done. And it really does show in very graphic form the amount of commitment that they've made to get to these places. And you know, it's not by chance that they've got a lot of these shots. They've done a lot of time out in the field to make those shots happen. So I always appreciate when photographers show that because you can see what the commitment that's been made.
While we're talking, I just got a message from Tim Parkins saying, "Yeah, you got time to do this. How about the writing?" Because he's waiting for my writing for the Natural Landscape Awards book. But just around that, I did really to me that's one of the most significant events in this year in the world photographic community is the Natural Landscape Photo Awards. To have a massive international platform for really pure photography that's all about camera craft and what happens before you press the shutter than after is something that's been quite lacking in the world. And I think a few people have had a bit of a go, but these guys have hit a formula that has really been embraced by everyone around the world. Really, there's 14,000 entries almost on the very first inaugural awards, so it's already one of the biggest in the world, and potentially next year it may be the biggest. And they've made
competitions that are happy with 2,000 entries or 3,000 entries. So 14,000 is just insane.
And they've made it very affordable and very accessible, and they're quite committed to do that. So having entered a couple of awards this year, just at the end of the year, you know, I think it was 60 US or something for 12 entries, whereas, you know, half the other contests are going there like $25, $30 US per single image. So
it's probably not the way to put it too, Paul, but you know, your pockets might be a bit deeper next year with no appers.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah,
maybe it's a mixed bag. I've got an exhibition coming up in January, and one of the reasons I said yes to it and organize it is I was going to justify 12 new APA prints that I was going to put in my exhibition and then put in a box and send to APA. And now there's no APA. I'm like, oh God, can I afford to do 12 new prints now? Like, because I don't have another purpose for them necessarily. So it's been an interesting one, and that is some of the big news of the year. You know, that's 75 years as the single overriding body for photography in Australia. There's been other bodies that have had significance, like the ACMP and others over the years, but which actually got amalgamated in the APP in the last sort of 4 or 5 years. But that's probably not one of the highlights of the year for me in terms of like losing something that's really significant to me personally. It's a bit of it sends not a disturbing message, but a bit of a tricky message out to the wider community about where the industry is standing. And
just on that, Paul, just before you continue, I think not everyone knows exactly what you're talking about.
Okay. Sorry.
Photographers will, but I think if you just explain what the ARPP is and what's happened, and that would just help, I think.
Yeah. So the Australian Institute of Professional Photography has been and growing into being over 75 years, the overriding professional body for photography from a professional standard in particular in Australia. And they have, you know, they've worked really hard over decades in terms of copyright laws for Australia, which have now become some of the best in the world and very, very fiercely contested and very difficult to get those rights in place. But as it stands, we are in one of the best positions on the planet in that regard, and that's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears from a lot of very significant people. It's been a lodestone to bring community together. They've done their best to try and pull together just about every genre there is, which is not an easy thing to do, and arguably successfully in certain areas and not so in others. But at the same time, there's no one else who's been doing that. And for me personally, you know, it's before the APP I even knew about it, I was just a lone wolf. I didn't know any other photographers. I had no engagement with other photographers. I was just living this completely soloist life and a little bit clueless to what was happening in the world. And in terms of how to progress from a business point of view, from a marketing point of view, from a multi-genre point of view, I can't even tell you how much I've grown from my commitment to that organization. And also the awards process is something I embraced wholeheartedly, and it's one of the best award processes on the planet. And I actually completely, firmly believe that's the case. I'm not aware of any competition in the world that is so highly scrutinized and so constantly evolving every year and accepting of feedback, and with such a high level of training for the judges, and that it's in print form, which is which is almost gone in the world.
Yep.
And a whole other craft in itself. And that just, I mean, I managed to get around every single state in Australia judging, and I now have places to stay all around Australia, friends all around the country, mentors, people I can borrow gear off or get advice from. And there is no price I can put on that. And I never looked at it from a financial point of view. I couldn't really tell you the kind of value I got out of it personally. And that's just my own personal journey. Other people have had different journeys with it, but that's been mine. And I don't need to worry about anybody else's, because that just stands alone for me. So there's a lot of sadness for me personally. There's a spark of hope in terms of, sometimes an old way has to pass for a new one that's more relevant and present to come to light. And there are plenty of people in the back rooms at the moment sort of really discussing that, and it'll be interesting to see what the new year brings.
Do you think that APA may be reborn? And it would seem a real shame for, obviously there's enough people that's interested for something to still happen there.
Yeah, I think something will come out. I think, as Matt Palmer sort of said with a lot of wisdom, let's take time to reflect before we jump out there with something else, and let's learn from the past. And they did their best to be quite open, and there's a lot of written material accessible about what happened in the end and why it went down, and it almost went down a few years ago. And there's financial issues, management issues, and it's largely run on volunteers, really, the whole thing. So its legs have really relied upon just thousands of hours of commitment from people who are also running their own businesses and time. So to say that that's totally sustainable is the fact that it's gone on that long as well as it has is pretty incredible, and a real testament to the community, to be honest. I'm a little bit out of that conversation in terms of who's been doing what. Certainly when it first happened, there was a lot of cries out of this and that, and there's been a huge outpouring of on social media from all sorts of pretty amazing people who've been involved for decades of what it's meant to them. So it's left a big hole. There's no two ways about it, and there are people that want to fill it. And I'm certainly happy to support and keep my eyes and ears open as to what's coming to light, and to share any sort of wisdom or insight that I can in terms of getting bigger and better. And it's growing pains. We grow up, sometimes we trip over and we hit ourselves, and we've got something to learn, and we come out better and stronger as a result. So a few years down the track, that might be the case, but at the same time, there's definitely a sense of grief and loss about 75 years of history, which you cannot easily replace.
And then also not having a sort of an industry body for professional photographers. And I mean, I think it was a bit debatable about how useful that was potentially in this day and age, at least. And I know they were trying to broaden the horizon and getting more of a camera club feel, getting more amateur people involved, just in terms of keeping the thing running. But there's still definitely a call for having some body or some space where professional photographers can be honoured or band together.
It's a big loss. I was obviously never a member of the AOPP, not being a full-time professional, but I followed their exploits closely, and a lot of my very good friends have been in the AOPP for a long time. The awards, the APA awards, were a big part of the AOPP, and for me, they were the most visual part of the AOPP. Luckily, in the last maybe 8 or 9 years, the APA awards were live streamed, so you could watch judging as it happened live. Obviously, you weren't able to see the prints themselves, but you could get a feel for the images because they put the image up on the screen, and then you would hear the judges would all leave their seats and go and scrutinise the print, which you didn't see, but then they'd come back and enter a score and then judge and then talk about the image. Some talked about a lot more than others. There was often cases where one judge felt it deserved a very high award, while others not so much a high award. And the discussion and debate that went around that sort of thing was one of the most educational things for me to observe as a sort of an outsider and an amateur. But the value that I got from watching what happened with the APAs is I can't even describe it really. And I suspect what the photographers got that that were part of the judging process, they became much better articulators of what they were seeing and how to actually then put that into words. And Paul, of course, you're probably one of the best examples of that, because the way that you grew into judging and have grown into judging, speaks for itself. And there are plenty of people in a similar position where you can see an image and then you can talk about it and articulate it so well. And yeah, from my point of view, seeing that sort of discussion on an image was absolutely invaluable. And it's a massive loss to lose the APAs at this stage. And I sincerely hope something can be done to resurrect it in a similar form and hopefully a form that will give that same sort of feedback, and hopefully still a print award, but that may or may not happen. But certainly the actual discussion that happened live was one of the, from a formative point of view as a photographer, was just, quite unbelievable to watch. It was fantastic.
Yeah, I've said it before and I'll say it again. I don't think there's any forum that I've learned more about photography from in my entire career than that. To sit on a panel with some of the best and greatest minds and talents in the country, and in some cases the world, because we do get international judges. I mean, where else can you do that? Where else can I sit there, on a panel with 4 grandmasters, which I've done sometimes, who have collectively of 150 years of photographic experience, and get into arguments with them, in conversations about things I haven't seen or didn't understand, or the homages I didn't know, or the technical prowess that I wasn't aware of, and to find the humility to grow and know when you're not, when you're wrong, or when you don't know things you've seen, or when someone else can really support you in a deeper understanding of something you weren't aware of, or it's really quite inspiring to go there. And the judges training by people like Bill Baxter is world class, and it's decades in the making, and the material that we have access to and the level of training we have, I don't believe exists anywhere in the world either. And that's partly why I jumped on board with the Asia Pacific Awards, because pretty much that's a similar team that I would have been working with at APA anyway. But at the same time, I'm not really aware, except maybe the WPPI and the NZWP, and which I've judged both of. That's the American Awards in Las Vegas and the New Zealand Professional Photography Awards, that have that live interactive panel where people who are the artists themselves can be in the room themselves physically, and also be online for the world to see. And it really puts you on the spot. I won't lie, it can be really high pressure, but that's actually something I love about it, because you just feel the energy in the room just lift. And all these contests in the world that are judged, and your back room with the screen by yourself with numbers, it's just not the same. It's just not. One, it's not a physical print, which is a whole craft in itself. And two, you're not in a room full of some of the great minds. You don't have the atmosphere, the energy, the intensity, and the focus that happens because of that is quite incredible. And it surprised myself, Nick, as you've seen me grow over the years, is whoa, I remember being one of the first times I ever got put on a panel. I was with, Tony Hewitt and Jackie Rankin and Mike Langford and Tony Carter. And I was like, okay, these are some of the greatest photographers in modern history. And I remember you weren't allowed to say anything that hadn't been said. And I remember about 10 times I was the 5th person to speak. So I had to come up with something new that hadn't been said, seen, spoken about, or understood about an image with some of the greatest minds of the country, or multiple countries. And I was just like, how am I going to do this? And somehow I did. And I surprised myself with and without that crucible, of like just, being forged in the fire, so to speak, I never would have kind of pushed myself as hard, or found things inside me, or gone to that level of depth of searching and understanding the communication of an image. So there's probably enough about that, but at the same time, it is probably one of the most significant things this year. And it's not an easy thing to replace, because the physical cost of running a print awards is massive, and it really needs a large organization and the industry behind it to work. And I think that would be not an easy thing to reproduce. But I'm with Nick. I think for the last 10, 15 years, it's been one of the greatest resources for photography in this part of the world, I would argue, in terms of its accessibility to the public and the level of knowledge and insight and depth and learning that you can have from that process is probably untouchable, really.
Yep, completely agree. And, the amount of, there was obviously there were people that had full-time jobs or part-time jobs with the AIPP, but the vast majority of it was volunteer run, and the commitment that was required to do that is something that seems to have fallen over in the last few years to a point. Obviously, there were still some extremely committed volunteers and employees.
Yeah, COVID really hurt. They lost 700 members during COVID purely through finances and so on. So, I mean, that was a really big factor, to be honest. I mean, it wasn't running perfectly before then, but that was sort of the nail in the coffin, really, I think, from what I can gather. And that's probably not kind of surprising. And there's a lot of industries in the world that have similarly suffered, and there's a lot of losses that have happened around the world because of it too. But anyway, New Year's coming, and I'm quite confident that there are some very wonderful people and beautiful minds that are really deeply considering where to from here.
Yeah. Just going, changing tack, but on a similar theme of commitment. I was just thinking before, when we were going through the episodes and talking about, you're talking about, the efforts of people to walk to certain locations and the amount of miles they've covered, to get particular shots and that sort of thing. I think if there was one theme that went through all our guests on the show, it is commitment. It's commitment to the craft of landscape photography in whatever form it takes. Not a single guest that we've had on is someone that I would say isn't fully committed to getting the images in whatever form they do, and some of the physical commitments have been extraordinary, and some of the time commitments have been extraordinary. And I guess if for anyone watching that doesn't do this full time or that sort of thing, if you can put some level of commitment into your work, and I know we're all very busy people, but if you just pick something small that you can commit to, and it may well be that if you live in a big city, for example, it's very hard for you, and you work full time, it might be very hard for you to travel to exotic locations more than once a year or once every couple of years, or even at all for some people. But if you put what commitment you have, or what time that you have into a small thing, a small project in your local area or something like that, and you stick with it and you work on it, then you will get the results that you're after. But if you flip between things, with the small amount of time that you have, you may find that you're disappointed with your outcomes. But if you commit to it, it might be a project of just a certain area or something like that, I think you'll get some real benefit from doing that. Obviously, we don't all have the time that some of our guests have to pursue certain things, but what little time you have, put it to something that means something to you, and stick with it, and you'll be surprised about what you can actually produce.
Yeah, sound advice, Nick.
Absolutely. So I think what we're also looking to do is go through our own journeys through the year and what we were able to do. Paul, I know you've had a very, very busy year. Nick, you've been able to go out and get some cracking shots as well. And I've been very grateful for the experiences I've had during the year as well. So we thought we'd go through and do our own little mini wrap-ups, I suppose, in terms of what we've been up to. And we don't often get a chance to show what we've been up to. Often we're talking to other people or talking about regions or other things. We do have a bit of a spiel at the start of the episode about what we've been up to, but we never really show anything. So this will be a good chance for us just to show what we've been able to do across the year, things that have really meant a lot to us across the year. And we're all going to have about 20 odd minutes each just to be able to talk to that and basically bring up anything that we'd like. And so it's something a bit different to what we normally do, but we're really looking forward to that in terms of being able to have the floor. And Paul's no stranger to doing that, so we might kick off with him and let him.
I get strict instructions to not go too long.
Yeah, so
20 minutes, you say?
So
Nick might not complain if he's got less
about
time.
till 5 past there, Paul, in terms of that.
Yeah, I mean, it was just a little bit of space for ourselves, I guess, because I mean, we have shown a huge commitment. This is a gift to the community. You know, this is totally unpaid, totally for the love, totally off our own bat at this stage. We may
if there's
look
any sponsors out there or anyone that's keen to contribute, then we are talking about potentially starting a Patreon or something like that, just to help cover. We have to pay for Zoom and other aspects to run this show, so there is some cost to us, not much, but it's very nice.
Well, it's a big time commitment, and I want to do all of us for that. Really, I mean, I don't know many people in the world that sort of volunteer their time like this as a gift back to the community, and it was only ever meant to be in a short thing and to make it sustainable. I know Luke's got a crazy busy year next year, so we may have to look at how we reshape that and how we manage the show. We might do more pre-records and to make it sustainable as things start opening up. And I'll be going away working more too. We might need to introduce a Patreon platform or something to make it a bit more justifiable. But rest assured, it's going to be cracking on one form or other. So, and we haven't put anything in place other than what we've been doing right now in place. But Luke, if you want to, my co-host, can I share screen?
Yep, you can launch into it.
Launch. Why is that coming up all blank? There we go. It's telling me I have to open system preferences in order to share screen, so I don't know what's going on there.
Yeah, that's a problem on your end.
Okay. Well, it hasn't come up with system preferences. Or might need to jump to somebody else while I figure this out.
Nick, are you able to start?
Yeah.
Sorry, Nick.
Yeah, I suppose I can do that. Yeah, no worries. I'll go to share screen. Oh. Right, does that come up?
Just yep,
there it is. There you go. Perfect.
Beautiful.
Yeah, cool. Excellent. We haven't had a lot of time to prepare for this particular show, so I just thought I'd have an idea of just going through a couple of raw folders, just to sort of show, my journey during a day or something like that when I'm out taking photos. I tend to take photos in batches. I tend to go away for a few days when I've got a chance, and focus on photography for a few days, and then it might be a couple of months before I do any photography at all, which it's not unusual. And thankfully, I've got some leave coming up over Christmas, which is fabulous, and I might be able to get out a bit and take some photos. But I was just looking at what I'd done for the year, and I'm not going to go through every raw folder, but I had a day walk up on the Tarn Shelf on Mountfield National Park, and I don't think I've really shown anything from that particular day, and I just thought I would just run through it very briefly. Hey. And yeah, you can just sort of see how I went about the day. I actually just, the Tarn Shelf is a place renowned for our famous deciduous tree, our only native winter deciduous tree in Australia, and it only lives in Tasmania, the Nothofagus gunni. And the Tarn Shelf is a premier place to view that, which you'll see in a minute. Yeah, we don't get a lot of autumn colour in Tasmania in general, apart from the the more populated areas where European trees in particular have been planted. But you certainly get a great view of that on the Tarn Shelf, and it's worth the walk. So most of these haven't been edited. I'm just showing you what comes out of camera, and you can just sort of see the sort of landscape that we have up on the Tarn Shelf. Beautiful colours of the fagus, and dotted in between them the amazing ancient pencil pine conifers. I really should publish some of these, I think, but these are all very accessible places on the walk. If you can do the walk, you will see these places, and I'm not showing anything that anyone's never taken before. I'm sure there's thousands of photos of these rocks, for example, out and about. But I haven't spent a lot of time up there. When I tend to think of Fagus, I tend to think more the northwest and western Tasmania than down south. But it certainly reminded me of what an amazing landscape the Tarn Shelf is. Just a fabulous spot, and in the right conditions. This was just a day walk. It was a sunny day.
Wow, look at the light.
Yeah. So this earlier on in the day was better for the photography, but just beautiful reflections. That one might be worth a run at some stage. Just little tarns. A tarn is obviously, for those who don't know, a very small pond or lake, I suppose, that we have in the mountains of Tasmania, and that's just what we call them. Some of these are very uninteresting, but you can see here this pencil pine with some beautiful gnarled branches. These things grow into the thousands of years in terms of age.
Yeah, they're really globally significant ancient trees that are, the conifers actually, and they're lineage back to Gondwanan times, so very, very old.
Yeah, and it's a real highlight of the Tarn Shelf to see them. And here you can see the pencil pines amongst the Fagus again, which is an ongoing feature. You
really nailed the timing, Nick.
Yeah. I was lucky with that. I didn't do any other Fagus shooting this year. It was just a case of not being able to get out and about and things getting in the way. But this was just simply a day walk, so you don't have to go and camp out overnight for it. But obviously trying different compositions, you can sort of see my thought process. A lot of these were taken with a longer lens, shooting across the tarns. It wasn't really a day where I was focusing on the ultra wide sort of thing. It's more just picking out the details. Some of these are pretty crap. There's a beautiful stand of pencil pines up there, which I tried at different focal lengths and focus stacking and not focus stacking and that sort of stuff. But yeah, it's an amazing spot. Some very poor attempts at detail. Not the right light for a detail shot of the Fagus, unfortunately. Anyway, that's one of the just the small highlights for the year for me, just getting out amongst it in the full loop. But yeah, I love that little island there. It's shaped a bit like a heart. But anyway, I'll go and I went up to the northeast and the northwest. I won't show you the northwest because I've actually named the folder. Oh no, that's the wrong northeast. That one. Actually, yeah. Anyway, I'll gather my thoughts now. So yeah, up to the northeast, and started off with some up in the blue tier, and did some focus stacking of. I won't go through the whole lot, but you can see how I've focus stacked this coral lichen. And similar with these, and we'll go right through there because that's really quite boring. They're big focus stacks.
Oh, is that the beauty of the internal D50 focus stacking, mate?
The 850 focus stacking, yep. I seriously wouldn't bother with focus stacking if it wasn't as automatic as it is with a D850.
Yeah, me neither.
Still got to blend the shots in Photoshop or one of the focus stacking software programs, but this just shows the changing light and waiting around for sunset up on the blue tier. None of these shots are great, but you can see how there's a bit of focus stacking there. You can see how the light's starting to intensify.
Oh, wow. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. And then, it went pretty crazy.
Bang.
Last there, and I was running around like a chook with my head chopped off, trying to find something worthwhile shooting, and I wasn't that successful, to be honest. But this was the last of the light there. And then the next morning, the light was terrible. I said, "This is, you're simply seeing stuff in the order that I've taken it." So you can see my sort of process here. Some beautiful little mist in the valley down below. Skip on a bit. Went for a walk up St Patrick's Head, which is a amazing little spot near St Mary's. Just a day walk.
Oh, I've never been there. I drove past it the other day.
It's really, it's a very striking mountain. It's like a triangle, a very pointed dome, and if you're driving into St Mary's, you'll see it. But it's quite a sketchy climb up to the last bit, just sort of beyond this bit. Getting up to the actual summit's a bit sketchy. There used to be a ladder that was installed for the last part of it, but that's been removed due to safety reasons, and ironically it's actually made it a lot less safe if you want to get to the top. And me hauling my substantial frame up some pretty sketchy rocks was a little bit interesting. But then that night I went to a place called Perrin Dunes, just photographed some sand dunes and tried some different compositions, bit of focus stacking, the light changing. And in the end, I think this was the one I published without the sky. I quite like it with taking the sky away. There's a few different comps there, and then obviously the light went, and then I've sort of processed that one a little bit, but yeah. Oh, yeah. A little bit of Belt of Venus going on, crap compositions. That was that shot I was talking about a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
What's going on with Paulie?
Derek. Oh, no, it was in the Natural Landscape Awards episode. One of the award winners had a... Yeah.
One of the things that goes around the circle anyway. That bit of astrophotography up in the blue tier. I tried some interesting compositions. Obviously lit with different various levels of lighting. In the end, I'm not overly happy with these photos. I haven't found one out of that set that I actually want to publish. And then I was into the forest. And again, you can see, basically how a walk went. A lot of unpublished stuff here that could potentially be published in the future, I suppose. Fair bit of focus stacking going on. And the mist was sort of coming in and out. As we went, that's the one that Paulie talked about a couple of weeks ago. Just different attempts at different things. And you probably notice here, I don't exposure blend.
What a stunning, this is that all up in the northeast, isn't it?
Yeah, you can see I removed a stick here. If you look at the bottom of the frame there, there's a stick there. I can actually just pick that up and move it. So sometimes you find those distractions a bit later, but
yeah. Stunning, Nick.
Yeah, it's just a simple day walk.
Is that the sort of area you might pop up back to at Christmas?
Probably not. I'm thinking of going up to the northeast, but I don't think really this is
not quite the right time of year.
Yeah, you need that sort of cooler time of year when it's a bit misty and rainy and that sort of thing. Otherwise, any harsh sunlight is no good at all.
Look at the shape of that tree. I've never seen anything quite like it.
Yeah, no, it's an amazing tree, and I haven't published one of these yet. I'm not quite sure what to do with them yet, but probably could have benefited from a little bit of exposure blending here, but yeah. And yeah, just... It's amazing what you can find.
I personally find that a bit challenging when you get up there like, I really need to focus stack and focus blend this, exposure blend this, and I'm like, it's all too hard. I just want to take pictures.
Well, that's what Alex was saying last night too.
It puts me off, to be honest. And sometimes I'm like, I can't be stuffed, or I just want to focus on the composition and doing all the techie head stuff as well sort of just takes away a little bit from it. So yeah, I can relate.
I definitely want to head back for this particular area where I took this in better atmosphere. In better atmosphere, I think this could be, a pretty reasonable composition with the way that it's sort of framed by the trees and that. But it needs a little bit of mist or a bit of different light, I suppose. You can see there the opportunities that you would have. And then back to another area, the mist sort of came in again. So on the way sort of back, it was, just trying different things, and you can see what it's like. But look, I'm not going to bore everyone with any more folders of things, but you can sort of see how I tend to go about. There's quite a bit.
It's really beautiful to see a journey through a landscape like this, Nick. I'm really enjoying it. And
it's
a place that I have never been, and I've been close by quite a few times. In fact, I spent 6 days in Derby and the Blue Tier just last month, I think.
It's really nice to see your process in terms of how you see a scene and explore it. And you probably don't think much of some of these, but like you could probably publish most of these.
They're stunning, Nick. They really are. I'd be so proud.
Yeah, it's
just work like this.
Just a day. This, focus stacking something like this is a massive challenge because of you can see the movement in the ferns. So it doesn't.
Why we haven't seen it yet, because you're going to have to dedicate some time to put it together.
Well, yeah. I mean, if we go back, you've seen this particular composition that I've done, and that worked okay as a focus stack. I'm not confident that this one, which is even more zoomed in, is going to work. So yeah, I just haven't bothered. I just get frustrated. I don't want to spend all my time on the computer doing stuff. With technical aspects. Some people really enjoy it, and some people are really good at it. I mean, Luke, for example, you're a fantastic post processor, and I just get frustrated.
Do you think that? Sometimes I have my moments.
I just get frustrated at dealing with technical things. I just want to shoot something and then simply, do a few tweaks to it and then put it out there. And if it takes me a long time to process because the focus stack is difficult because there's movement or something like that, then I'll just walk away from it. I'll go, it's not worth it. It's also a good lesson to don't just focus stack stuff. Take shots that are where you'll use a F16 or something like that, and a less adventurous composition with things too close to your lens, and just take a single shot. So you've got a safety shot, I suppose, something that will work without you having to focus stack, because as you can see, just the movement in the leaves of the fern produce issues. So that's just a bit of a tip from what I've learned from my brief career of focus stacking.
So with this light, you had a slight amount of mist, and it was kind of like early morning kind of scenario?
Yes, it was when I first went up there, it was early morning. These are late. These are 1:30 in the afternoon now, these.
Oh, right.
But for the first lot, I mean, I was wandering up there for, 5 or 6 hours, just sort of taking my time.
Oh, man, it's such a treat to get such a long window to shoot. It's not that common.
Yeah, it was, and I think I've explained it on other shows before that I tend, when I go on these trips, I think it was only a couple of weeks ago I was saying this, when I go on these trips, I tailor what I actually do based on the weather conditions. So I'll have a plan of ideas, and then if the weather's going to be sunny, then I'll go and shoot, sand dunes or the coast or something like that. If the weather's going to be misty, then I'll go to the forest.
I'm a big believer in that too. It's like my dad always used to say when I was playing cricket, play each ball on its merits. And I feel like that's very similar with photography. What's good about the conditions right now, and if I came back at another time, would these conditions be the same? And so, you know, you might come back and never see the mist like this, so you really need to focus on the forest, or it might be, yeah. So it's just about thinking, you know, what's the best part about what the conditions are now, and really focusing on that, and that adaptability is really important.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. It's the only way I can go about it. If you I think people that don't have a lot of time to go and do something, they'll think, right, I've got a rostered day off in 2 weeks, and I really want to go to destination A, and then they have it in their mind that's what they're going to go to. And what happens is destination A, they get there and the light is crap. The conditions that they've envisaged in their mind aren't right, and they go away feeling frustrated and disappointed. So I generally say to landscape photographers, you know, that are sort of budding, is to say, right, I've got this
planning show.
I've got this day off. Let's go and do. Let's have plan A, B, and C, and whatever the conditions are for that day is what plan you take. So maximize your opportunities, look at the weather, don't have a preconceived idea too far ahead, because if the weather conditions aren't right, you'll go there, it won't work out how you want it to work out, and you'll come away feeling frustrated. So just have several different plans, and go for the plan that makes the most sense based on the prevailing weather conditions, and you'll come away with feeling a lot better after a shoot, basically. Anyway, that's me. I just sort of do something a bit different to what you guys are probably going to do, and just run through a couple of raw folders. Little bit of maybe a benefit to some people to see how a day will pan out for me, but that's basically it. A day or a few days. Obviously, with the northeast, that was over the course of several days. And again, you can see there, you know, I went to a sand dune because I knew there was going to be direct light on the sand dune. Otherwise,
parent dunes.
Yeah, parent dunes. So if it was going to be cloudy in the west, where the sun's setting, I wouldn't have gone to the sand dunes, because I specifically wanted direct light on the dunes. And if there wasn't going to be direct light on the dunes, then I wasn't going to go to the sand dunes. I'd go somewhere else on the coast, or and shoot something completely different. But you know, I looked at what was happening and went, right, this is where I want to go when there's direct light. And so I had that idea in my mind, and you know, I got the results that I was after. And then literally, you know, next day was misty and cold, and that was the perfect chance to go into the hills.
And northeast is good like that. There's a lot of options either way. It's quite a good way to spend some time, and there's, depending on what the weather's doing, the light's doing, there's a lot of options within like an hour's drive to really get quite striking and unique imagery.
Yeah.
Having just done that myself, it was 3 days of rain, so I stayed in the highlands, and then it started clearing up, and I went down to the coast, and I ended up getting to those dunes for the very first time, Nick, and I did the same thing. I waited for the conditions and the lighting to get there, and I managed to get there slightly too late. Woohoo!
Oh no!
Yeah. Well.
I was too distracted by surfing, so I can't complain.
Yep. Well, you'll know where to go next time, and it's all good. But anyway, that's me. Obviously, I did plenty of other things during the year, but if we went through every raw folder, we'd be here a while. Not quite as long.
Well, we might pass over to Paul now, and Paul can
you make me a co-host, Licky?
Sorry?
Can you make me a co-host?
Yeah.
I just got a new motherboard on the computer, and it's basically starting a lot of things from scratch. So it wouldn't let me go to my desktop.
It should be all good now.
So that's good. So I was a little bit lucky this year, and not just lucky, but also determined. As anyone who knows me, I'm not much of a couch potato, and I don't spend a lot of time at home. And unlike Nick, I don't have a beautiful family to come home to, so I've sort of got plenty of reason to get out and about. And I'd live a different lifestyle if I did. But I born to travel, and I got gifted 4 passports from birth, so it's just pretty handy. And to make the most of them. So going back to something that I think I might have shared a little bit on one show, but I'm super proud of this year, and it's probably I don't know, 10 or 15 years in the making, was doing this project I did with Luke and Andrew Phipps with the Bob Brown Foundation, with two very powerful and significant members of the Tasmania Aboriginal community. And we got sponsored literally about, I don't know, $14,000 to $15,000 to get choppers out to an incredibly remote area of the west coast of Tasmania in the Tscharke, to basically be their voice, tell their story, and explore sacred places. And I mean, it really is the most phenomenal area and significant area possibly in the world, that's testament to the longest running culture on earth. Like pretty much every step you take on the west coast of Tasmania, on the northwest in particular, is a living testament to their culture. You can just see their middens and their eating areas and their hut depressions and their seal hides, just everywhere you go. And there's nowhere in the world, even on mainland Australia, where that's so visibly accessible. And it's actually being physically destroyed by recreational four-wheel drivers just running through and running sort of rampant. And there's been sort of fairly unchecked capacity for them to do that. There's nothing down there. They're just doing it for fun. So they're basically, and they often aim for those middens and areas because it's better grip for their tires. And we had some interesting conversations over the years with, and even out there in the field with them, like, hey, we've been coming out here 30 years, I'll take my boys out, and they love it too. But at the same time, it's hard to weigh up somebody's recreational pastime for 60,000 years of cultural heritage. And there's been a bit of a bit of conflict there, I guess, and there's been injunctions by the Aboriginal community to stop access to these areas. They're very, very remote, and there's lots of other places to go and they even opened up other areas specifically to allow people to do this sort of four driving for fun that don't have quite as significant heritage value. And you can see that's just a couple of vehicles. And, a lot of these dunes are actually burial sites that are thousands of years old, and they move and change all the time. And there's one area behind this dune that is just the greatest living testament to their culture I've ever seen. And even some of the elders that we brought out hadn't seen it either. And I think it's partly got revealed by the sand moving and opening up, just tens of thousands of years of heritage just out for us to see. So you won't get here without maybe 5 or 6 days return bushwalking minimum. So that's why, getting a chopper out there was really the only way we were going to get some of the elders in particular out there. And we had 4 days. We had incredible weather. And we're very, very, very lucky. Andrew put together a beautiful, beautiful film, which we've since displayed and had called Muntra Kawipa, that we will actually probably move out towards some environmental film festivals. And it was beautifully received, and a huge testament to Andrew Phipps for the work that he's done sort of putting that together. That's, people don't know there's dunes like this in Tasmania, and that's actually Luke and Andrew there to give it a sense of scale. And we're talking 70-meter high dunes, and most people in Tasmania will never see these and probably never even know they exist. And they're quite a significant part of the lifestyle and the atmosphere and the context that the Tasmanian people lived on that area of the coastline. That's just a small example of just one area where there's middens. I think there must have been about 50 of these in one place, and I've never seen anything like it. It's almost like you would just, you almost didn't even want to step foot in there. It just felt so sacred. So we actually filmed a lot of it in and around these mounds, and we interviewed Teresa Sainty, who's one of the great elders, particularly of the northeastern Tasmania. And she very, very, very eloquently spoke, and in a way that, we wanted it to be, at least ideally, quite accessible to people and not necessarily controversial. That was our secret little squirrel campsite for the week, which was really fun. There's Teresa there, and Teresa I've known for about 10 or 15 years now. And she's a huge advocate for the Palawa sort of people, and she has wonderful knowledge, and she's very eloquent, and she bridges the worlds quite well, but she's also very fierce and very clear about the goals of returning areas to the Aboriginal people that are probably, arguably from a Western point of view, the great people most capable of sustainably managing the country. And Bob Brown Foundation is who sponsored us, and quite beautifully, we very, very shortly after that, we had a campaign, a very public one, and I have to say very, very gratefully that that area is now officially closed to recreational four-wheel driving for the foreseeable future. And there's lots of people who have gone before what we've done to be the voice for that, but it was really nice to be part of that conversation, to have such an incredible outcome. And Bob's a bit of a personal hero of mine, I won't lie. I don't sort of look up or revere too many people like this, but Bob's one of those people. I think he stands for the integrity and authenticity and politics like few people ever have and maybe ever will. Yeah. And just who he is as a person. He's been walking this particular country since the early 1970s personally, and he got out to these areas before many white people ever had. So this country's in his blood, and he fights for it with everything he has. And I'm really, really proud to be sitting on the team as well. And Nala Nadsel is one of the great voices for the community as well, the Indigenous community. And they have a wonderful relationship with the Bob Brown Foundation. And together they've been putting a lot of really powerful campaigns together to, stop the sort of needless destruction of native forests and various areas of cultural heritage as well. So real highlight of the year. I'm really proud of that, Lukey, and it was really amazing to do that with you, my friend, and Andrew too.
Yeah, it was a very special opportunity, and one that we certainly didn't take for granted.
Yeah, a long time in the making, and it almost didn't happen. It was literally 5 minutes to go on the night before that we couldn't get a permit from Parks because they were aware of the potential controversy and there's other sort of issues at play. But we got there, and we're kicking and screaming and fighting. We pulled it off. So the other thing I've spent a lot of time doing, the thing that's kept me alive most of the year and kept a roof over my head is working for a wonderful company that's based on, had a lot of property on Bruny Island. It gives me the freedom to explore and the autonomy to go out and do what I do. And just, my brief is generally just go and shoot where the light's good and what you want, and showcase, the purity of the island and the authenticity of its wilderness values, particularly on the southern end of the island. And that's been a bit of a dream, really, and that's really largely thanks to Lukey for introducing me to these guys. And that's been a real treat for me. And I've literally spent every month of the year, I've spent a significant amount of time down there and getting up at crazy early hours, which I don't normally do. So the other major highlight for me was that few people got to do, and I feel a bit jealous and lucky and a bit self-conscious, that I managed to get an entire trip around Australia. And I called it
pull it off, Paul.
Yeah, I reckon too.
Trip from hell. I don't know how I pulled it off. It was difficult, that I couldn't get excited for it because it could have got stopped before it got started, and at any time of the trip it could have got shut down. And so it's a real yo-yo for me personally. Normally I get pretty excited and amped about a trip, and what made it really special for me was the photographers and people that brought it to life for me. So if anyone knows me, I live pretty simply, and I'm an epic couch surfer. And I think in 5 weeks, I paid $14 for accommodation on one night in a campground somewhere. The rest of it was couch surfing. And the first time was with my friend Eda here on the left. And to the right is two very dear friends of mine that are some of the most beautiful photographers I know in the world, Rachel Callender and Nathan Madigan. And Nathan Madigan has won Australian Wedding Photographer of the Year. And Rachel's an incredible advocate for using her photography for the voice of disability, and to the point where she now does talks all around the world and has created incredible books and features and works with politicians. And it was a real treat to see her and spend time there. We actually had organised a pilot to do some incredible flying, a private pilot who was just going to charge us for petrol, and had all these meetings with him. We'd organised the whole thing. We'd done the flight plan, and then I got to the night before I was leaving, and the forecast was 5 days of rain and storm and winds, and it was like, oh. That was 4 months of planning that's gone down the toilet. And I was literally at the airport just about 5 minutes before I jumped on the plane to come to Perth. And just on a wing, I rang up Jandakot Airport and said, oh, you don't happen to have any planes free tomorrow morning between 6 and 8 a.m. when the last weather window is there, that you can take with a pilot ready to go that's already fueled, because I know you're about to close in 5 minutes, and that can have the doors off. And they were like, actually, we do. And the guy was like, he couldn't believe it himself, because Peter Ann North was doing a flight at 11 a.m. and had organised a plane for that very thing, all fueled up with the doors off, ready to go. And and I managed to sneak in and do an epic flight over a lot of the more built up sort of man-made areas southeast of Perth in particular. And, I'm very nature orientated, but I also have been running a long-term project on altered lands, like how we're altering the earth by using it as a resource. And I had this in mind for this particular flight. And there's about 4 or 5 kind of major mining sites southeast of Perth that are within a couple of hours flight. And some of them would have been over and some of them hadn't. So I made a point of sort of knocking it off the to-do list, I guess, on this trip. And the trip was actually just started from a wedding. I had a wedding in Darwin, and then I thought, well, I'm going to Darwin. I want to go to the East Kimberley because I wanted to go there for a million years. And then I realized, well, I had to fly through Perth, and I was like, well, if I'm going to go through Perth, I might as well stay over and catch up with friends and do a flight. And the trip just kept expanding. And then my good friend Scott Patel rang me up and said, I want someone to shoot with in the golf cafeteria. And I said, when's that? And he gave me some dates, and it was a week after the wedding. And then I was like, oh, golf cafeteria, it's close to Cairns. So I rang up a fellow I'd heard about called Mitchell Burns, and it's ended up being a 5-week epic trip around Australia. And this is actually where I captured this image, which won the aerial category in the Natural Landscape Awards this year, which is also a bit of a highlight for me. And as I was saying, like literally during the show, I've had Tim Parkin writing me saying, you need to hurry up with this writing, my friend, because they want to publish the book. And they've given me 600 word space, Nick, to come up with something significant. So no pressure. Well, just about this image. So I've been putting it off a little bit, but I'd like to think it's my subconscious working in the background to say something of significance, because I'm very a very esteemed company and with some very, very well established and incredibly deep thinking people around this competition and the judging. So I have to come up with something good.
You sure you're able to condense it into just 600 words though?
Oh yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I need you to be my editor, Nick. You're amazing.
Whipping boy.
So very rare opportunity, but one of the greatest aerial photographers in the world is Tony Hewitt. And he's based in Perth, and I knew the show was on. It was only on for a few weeks, and I just happened to time the trip. And it's one of the reasons I pushed to go through Perth was to get to his show and to see a body of work by one of the greatest in the world and one of the best printers in the world in particular, where the images are like 2 meters square and just to utter perfection from corner to corner is nothing I can even really put into words. I just missed Tony by an hour, unfortunately, to go through it in person. But goodness me, it was a great way to start the trip and an incredible inspiration for me personally. I mean, I really, really love exploring the Australian outback in particular from an abstract perspective, and there's no one in the world that's really done it like Tony. At least not in modern times anyway. Richard Waldendorf has seen more of the country than probably anyone and probably ever will, but Tony does it with a very modern, contemporary, abstract style that really, really fits with me personally. So that was a hell of a treat. And then I'd finally caught up with Tony Malkin to the left and Sarah Dugan on the right, and they are incredible human beings. And they put me up. Tony got me. I thought I was sleeping on the floor in a tent somewhere, and she ended up getting me free accommodation in this 5-star resort in Emma Gorge or something. I was like, what the heck? So I made sure to do some photography for the owner as a thank you. And Sarah, actually, who I'd been talking to for 2 years but hadn't met in person, got me on one of the most incredible adventures of my life, which I'll go into shortly. So I managed to get up in the air. It wasn't easy, actually. And we ended up the only flight we could get was with a mustering pilot. And they don't normally fly people around. They're normally whizzing around at 10 meters in height, whipping on a dime, going around country, getting the cattle and different people around. And there's young Jack from Top End Musterers, and possibly the best helicopter pilot I've ever flown with. Like the level of confidence and assurity and skill that he had was just unbelievable. I think my images have jumped forward from the images from that shot. All right. No, I think I'm jumping to the next adventure. So if you want to see a little bit more in the flesh, there's a show called Around Australia in 30 Days. It covers a lot of that.
What episode number was that one?
Oh, I wouldn't tell you off that. It's probably about 15 episodes, 12 or 13 episodes ago, I reckon. It was probably, August. 52,
yep.
I got back in August, so it's around then.
Yeah, episode 52.
But what happened is Sarah, I had organised to spend time with Sarah and do all this stuff, and then all of a sudden she said, I can't do it anymore. I've got this job. I've got to go into this incredible remote area in the central Australian desert to a remote community and document a performance in a dying language, well, Najati language, in an area that's permanent only, and it's taken ages to set up. And I was like, oh well, I can't I can't argue with that. That sounds really important. And a few days later, she said, actually, maybe I can get you in, and maybe you can come. And the only time we could go was when I'd organise a flight with Tanya, and I was like, oh crap. But even Tanya said, look, just go. This will be an experience of a lifetime. And not only that, she gave me permission in the end. She actually got me a job and actually I became part of the team when they heard I was a drone pilot, funny enough. So I went out there. We didn't know where the hell we were going, and we didn't have any Telstra coverage, and her troopy died. So we had to go in a backup car, which didn't have much clearance. And it was pretty touch and go. We probably spent an hour and a half on roads like this, having no idea where we were, no signs, no people, no nothing for like 2 hours, just going, fucking hell. And we eventually found it. And this is Lake Paraku. And one of the first things I did is I went out to the lake itself. The community Milan that I went to is sort of up in the area over here. And the lake itself is very rarely full of water like this. There's a huge, colossal testament. There's the road sign for getting into Milan community. We had to go through some quite big ceremony to be allowed in there, as well as the permits from a legal point of view as well. It's been closed from COVID for almost a year and a half. And here's the performance, just a few taster shots. This young girl came rushing out and just grabbed me by the legs and hugged me like I was their best friend. I couldn't believe it. Like, these people weren't used to white people being around. The young kids in particular, it was a real novelty to have anyone with brown hair or blonde hair like Sarah has, and I felt so welcomed. At the same time, it was, there was a lot of sanctity around photography, and I spoke in the episode about an incredibly challenging experience I had around that as well. This is actually the flight that I did with Tanya around the East Kimberley. And the Moab trees in particular are, they just have a personality like no other trees I've ever seen, next to maybe some of the aging myrtles. That's back to the lake itself, some bigger, wider kind of pano sort of shots. Lots of testing out of drones, flight limits. I had several walks of 1.5 kilometers in length going to find my drone because it didn't make it back because I was pushing it too far and hard, as I do. This is the Dreamtime story of the Barramundi and the egret, which is one of the great stories for their land and their country. And I haven't had an experience quite so pure. And so, like, basically there was nobody speaking English. They were all speaking traditional dialects and languages. And there were strict rules about male and female interactions and protocols around the elders. And I was there with special permission. I was with the IPA Rangers in particular, who are incredible people. And there's Sarah, and there's the two artists that have been working with the community for years, actually, in terms of creating this content and this voice to keep a dying language alive. And the idea was to use this imagery to then help it travel around the country and gain more funding to re-enliven sort of that part of the culture. Huge experience. Whipped into Darwin, did my wedding. And as I did around the whole country, I thought, well, who's the best local photographer that I'd love to connect with and knows the country really well? And Louise Denton is one of them. She's been on the show and had her own show on the area of Darwin and the region around it in particular. She's very prolific. She's probably one of the most successful photographers in the country, actually, in terms of prints. I don't know anyone outside of maybe Ken Duncan that might be doing 200 plus prints every 2 weeks, but she's one of them. JP is someone I've flown with for years, on and off on multiple trips. He's a French Canadian and he's an absolute legend. And he rearranged the entire plane and ripped out all the seating and bought harnesses specifically just for our flight. And that really made a huge difference. We did Yoda style. You can see our harnesses there. We could really lean out the window and just make the most of every second we had. And really, we had a bit of fun getting out to the Bino Harbour, and that we got there. We got to the spot. We'd spent an hour flying there and probably $800 worth of fuel to then get thrown out of the area instantly because of a military operation that was done on short notice that nobody knew about. Thanks very much. So that's left a few things wanting in terms of that particular part of the world. My screen just froze there for a second. I'll go back. And then the next phase of the trip was meeting up with this wonderful gentleman. Scott Patel, who's on the show. He's one of the greatest underwater photographers, as well as one of the more experienced drone pilots in the country, as well as a fantastic landscape shooter. There's almost nothing he doesn't do, and filmmaker and conservationist. And very privileged him to reach out to me and headhunt me for this trip. And I'd never been to the Gulf of Carpentaria, which is sort of in between Cape York to the east and Arnhem to the west. And I'm now in love with a new part of Australia I knew nothing about. And it's very different at different seasons. We were there kind of the start of the dry season, so there's still quite a lot of moisture around, and there was a lot of combinations of receding kind of water lines and salt patterns starting to re-emerge from these areas that were probably completely underwater just a couple of months before. An abstract dream palette is how I describe it, and it was such an incredible sort of trip. There's a whole show dedicated to just this trip with Scott. So definitely worth a bit of time. We put the drones to use, so we spent most of our time sort of in the year with Savannah Air, based out of Burketown, who are a great company to work with. Definitely I'm really surprised. I wasn't sure like how prolific it was going to be, or if it was going to be a bit same up there, because from a Google Earth, it looked like a lot of the similar features, and how wrong I was. That's actually one from my earlier talk. And the last thing I did was I went out to Cairns and I met up with Mitchell Burns. And Mitchell's had his own gallery out in Port Douglas, and he's a prolific photographer, real perfectionist. He runs the 100 meg Fuji system, and I've hardly seen anyone sort of refine every single pixel of his photographs.
Was that posed, or was it?
Oh no, he's walking through. We were actually out on these dunes, and it was my idea. Actually, I saw it out of the corner of my eye, and he actually said, "Yep, the tide's good. Let's head out here." And there was a big sand grove area of wetlands that you really get the right tide to sort of access. And so we went out there, and what I did with a lot of, because one, it's a great thing to do, is to have somebody show you around, and two, every flight I did, I actually shared it with other photographers, and three, I actually spent time doing behind the scenes photography and video for each other. So so it's a bit of a wonderful way to exchange knowledge and information. And I took videos and stills and drone footage of Mitch, and he did similar for me, and he's actually created some films out of this work. And possibly the greenest greens I've ever seen in Australia was this area in the Daintree. It took us about an hour's driving to get out the back here. I think it's Mount Lindsay or somewhere, but goodness me, my eyes were almost popping out with how great it was. So a real privilege to manage to see such a variety of country in just 5 weeks, and to get to almost every state in one go. And literally Perth closed down behind me with COVID, Darwin closed down behind me with COVID. And I got to Cairns, and they actually blocked me coming back for Tasmania because they backdated when I'd been in Darwin. So I had an extra week in Cairns, which wasn't too hard to take on the chin. And lastly, but not least, literally last month, I got, just a month ago now, so it's in October, I got invited by a dear friend on very, very short notice, literally 2 days notice. Do I want to come up to the Great Barrier Reef and go sailing and be part of a crew to do some sea trials for a new boat to bring it back to Tasmania? And it took me about 10 seconds to say, hell yes. And at the time, I was up in northeast Tasmania shooting, and I've been away for 9 days already, so it was a bit of a stretch. But life's short, and I looked at the COVID, and actually Queensland was looking reasonably good, so I went for it. And every 3 or 4 years, I do a big sailing trip, partly in testament to my father, and who passed 30 years ago, and we spent a lot of our lives sailing together, and I haven't really sailed a lot since. So I really find it a beautiful way to kind of relive my relationship with him and my love and passion for the ocean, and from a different perspective from surfing. It's very different. The night before this shot, we actually ran aground on a reef at midnight in the dark, and it was one of the scariest experiences I've ever had, which is partly why we're doing sea trials on the boat, because the GPS wasn't working properly, and it was a good thing to figure out. So we were using literally iPhones and bits and pieces to track ourselves in the dark, and this literally had like a 5 meter wide window entrance to get in. And anyway, that was fairly exciting. We were very lucky to get off. This is Pancake Creek.
Beautiful. Well, it's great.
Northwest, and yeah, the colorations of the bays there. I think this is it's a big lighthouse to the left here. Wow, Butthouse. I can't remember the name exactly, but it's probably 5 hours north of Brisbane, and probably 3 hours north of Noosa. And yeah, got the drone out, and which the sand patterns out here were just absolutely phenomenal. Scary as crap to fly drones off boats, especially when you're only landing patches about 45 centimeters wide in between wires and ropes and everything else with a moving boat to land on. But I did it. And I'm really glad I did. I got some beautiful imagery. And the highlight of the trip, and I'll finish on the note, is we went about 100 miles out shore to this place, Lady Musgrave Island. And that's the very, very southern tip of the Great Barrier Reef. Literally, there's one island slightly south called Lady Elliot, which officially is the starting point of the Great Barrier Reef. This is the second, and it goes 2,000 kilometers north all out to Papua New Guinea. There's a tiny, tiny little entrance there into this reef, and that's literally about 5 meters wide. So the reason why we went to Pancake Creek was we realized we were going to be doing this in the dark. And we realized that at least Pancake Creek is sand if we're going to be doing it in the dark. So we waited a couple of days and took a rest day after that night before, which I will never forget. And we kind of needed it. And we came out here for 3 days, and possibly one of the most stunning experiences I've ever had.
Oh, wow.
This island has about 15,000 birds on it. Every single branch of every single tree on without fail is full of knobbies and terns of different descriptions, and the flora is like nothing I've ever seen anywhere in the world. So it was just like being in an alien planet, or just being somewhere so unique and different. And I spent every day snorkeling out on the edges of these reefers. I went out through this little channel here and went up and down this reef every day, just swimming with green turtles. And I literally had, some of them were 20 minutes just side by side, always touching each other, just looking at each other in the eye. I don't know. It gives me goosebumps just even thinking about how lucky I was to get out there. And yeah, another sort of COVID dodge special. So great way to finish the year for a trip, and very, very privileged year for me to get out there. And despite sort of, what could have been a very insular kind of year, I pushed it pretty hard and I managed to get out. So my soul feels very lucky and filled that I managed to get to stretch myself like that and stretch my legs and get to fly.
You're a lucky man, Paul. Well done.
Very, very lucky, Nick.
Oh, yes.
I didn't want to rub it in anybody's face, who didn't have those privileges, but at the same time, it was risky as well. I could have been, stuck in a lot of places, and, and I went into quite a bit of debt to do that trip because I didn't really have the money for it. But at the same time, my soul needed it, really. I was just crying out for it. So, yeah, hell of a year in the end, to be honest.
Yeah, got up to a lot there. All right, well, I'll launch into my set here. I'm not generally the most organized person, so I have a bit of a selection here. There's actually a lot of shots that I'd love to show. I did a massive 21-day road trip around Tasmania for probably one of the biggest jobs I've ever done. That's still kind of under an embargo, so probably fortuitous in a way that I don't have those images to show, but certainly when that does become like the project becomes live, then I'll be able to talk about it a little bit more and maybe even do a bit of an episode about it, because it's not often you get to drop everything and do a fully dedicated photography trip for 21 days around the whole of Tasmania. It's not something that you would do as a pro normally, because you're sort of focusing on a particular area. So it was quite an interesting experience, and definitely something that I'm very, very keen to share. But what I'm going to do now is just show through the year that I've had. It's actually quite a special year for me, actually. I just going back over everything that I have in my collection. I don't think I've even left the state this year, but in terms of Tasmania, but I've been able to have some pretty amazing experiences. And at the start of the year, I was able to actually get away with Paul out to the Bay of Fires, and we had quite a lot of exploring around that particular area, especially the further north part, which is, I guess, more known as Mount William National Park. And there are some pretty special beaches up there that's well worth exploring around Stumpy's Bay and those kind of areas, which we certainly had a good go through, and that was really memorable time with you, Paul, doing that.
Yeah, I loved it. Thanks for inviting me, Licky. Licky's
no,
so good
fine.
at roping me into trips. and getting me out there like few people ever have. So
Yeah,
very
no, that's
grateful
well,
for that.
I do it. I always need an accountability partner, so I actually go out and do things. So it's always you're helping me out a lot. I was able to go with a very dear friend of mine, Andrew, to Mount Rufus, and certainly a great experience being able to head up there and get some photos. So some of these I haven't even shown before. This is a beautiful sandstone outcrop that they have there. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to photograph it in the magic hour light, but all the more reason to go back to a place like this. It's quite a stunning area.
Yeah.
I was also able to focus quite a bit this year on Mount Millington, Canonge. I have photographed for an Australian Geographic assignment, actually, which is in the next issue of Australian Geographic coming out probably in January. We're going to have an article all about Canonge, and I was very fortunate to be able to do a lot of portrait work, which isn't something I normally do for some of the key people relating to the history of the mountain, and so I'm really excited about that. And some of these images ended up in the sort of portfolio that I provided to AusGeo, so I don't know if they're going to get published or not, but I had early in February I spent at least 3 or 4 nights up on the mountain doing astrophotography. Really took advantage of some very, very good conditions for astrophotography, and was able to get a few different shots that I'm quite happy with up there. And this is using the Mona Spectra, which only is obviously on a Saturday, because that's when the only night that the spectra goes off. Yeah, so it was nice to also be able to use that as a bit of a feature in some of the images, and really sort of play with different compositions and spend some time up there, because these are all in February. It's still pretty cold up there in February, but it's certainly a lot better than in winter or something like that. So that's also why with the clearer skies in February, I was really kind of prioritizing going up there and doing that. And Joe Rainbow inspired me to get the tilt shift lens out, and so I was doing a few tilt shift panoramas and trying a few different things. I was expecting to be using that all across the year, but I didn't end up doing that. Fell back into my old things, but certainly a great tool for some panoramics. Yeah. And then in February as well, we happened to get a really quite an amazing aurora show, and I actually spent all night up at this location photographing the aurora. And was able to come away with some images I was really happy with. And I even created a time lapse and a few other things. So definitely a special moment being up on the mountain for an aurora. It's a really great location to see the aurora, because you're sort of up, sort of away from light pollution. You can see it down here, but it doesn't have a massive impact on the resulting image. So that was a really special time, and I do remember there was probably a week there where I didn't get much sleep at all, and it wasn't the best for my mental health at all, but it was good for photography, and I guess I've got the shots to show for it now. So certainly was it's like what we were saying too, if the conditions are there, you just sort of have to make hay while the sun shines, and or the aurora shines or the Milky Way shines, and just and go for it, and you can always catch up on sleep or things like that later, but you know, these conditions don't always manifest themselves. So the other reason why it's good at this time of year to do astro is because in the winter months, the mountain actually closes overnight because of the forecast ice in the road. And so I knew that I could drive up there and actually get to some of these locations. If I was to walk up there, if the mountain was closed, it would take a few hours. And when it's at night, on top of everything else, you know,
electric mountain bikes, Mookie, electric mountain bikes.
Yeah, no, that might be a thing to think about. There's been a few things that have come up where that would be quite handy. I was also really lucky in late Feb to get a permit to fly a drone at Cockle Creek in the southern part of Tasmania, just for where basically the end of the road is in Tasmania. And I was also able to get a drone permit to fly at Lion Rock as well. I haven't really shown these images before, they're not even edited, and then I was able to shoot down there, obviously with my main camera as well, and got some shots down there that I was quite happy with.
It was somebody that brought in spare batteries.
Hey?
It was somebody that brought in spare batteries for you.
Did they? Oh yeah, that's right. Yes, that was very handy. So no, it was a really special trip. And then in March, we got an aurora, a really nice one, which I went down to the channel for, and yeah, just got some really beautiful show, and I thought that might be one of the better ones of the year, but little did we know November was going to really go off. Then on the trip that Paul was talking about as well, we were able to explore the amazing Tscharke coast, which was absolutely gobsmackingly beautiful. And was able to do a little bit of astrophotography there as well. This is one of the midden sites that Paul was talking about. They're very exposed, and it's very clear the history, the cultural heritage of the place. And yeah, I absolutely love dune photography, so I was definitely in my element there, wandering through the dunes and finding different features to photograph. This might even be that midden that we're talking about, Paul, with you can see almost a calcification on the top of the midden, and then very clearly the sort of dome shaped appearance. Well, they don't like the term midden, it should be more of a living site, but cultural site. Just the really tortured wild coastline with the waves barreling in. Just a very, very stunning location that I really can't wait to get back to, and I would love to walk the length of this coastline. I was hoping to have already done it this year, but there's still time. So there's you can just imagine how much you would see just walking along this, and how all of the different patterns and rocks and all of the just compositions for days, really. Then I did the workshop on Bruny Island for a little bit, and that was great, getting into a few different areas, and Mr. Hoelen representing with his R5 as well was really nice.
And Lukey's hand-me-down bag.
Yeah, that's right.
Alex hand-me-downs when he upgrades. It's great.
And then I did a trip out to Mount Field, and then on the way back, I heard that there was going to be an aurora, so I went out to Tessellated Pavement. I think Nick, you even joined us out there as well. Yeah, that was quite a nice little show. I was going to include some Fagus shots, but I didn't get to that. But yeah, there was plenty of Fagus shooting this year as well. Got a bit of snow back on the mountain. This is a famous composition by a sort of an ordinary photographer, but we don't need to mention his name on the show. But no, it's a really really lovely spot up there. And then in winter, I did a bit of hiking. I went out to Lee's Paddocks. Was lucky to get a bit of a dusting of snow there on the walk in, and well, it was actually pretty no snow on the walk in. It snowed while we were there, and then on the walk out, we're able to get a bit of snow, and got a few shots here that I still need to get through.
For the viewers, Lukey, that's actually a very rare parcel of private land right in between Cradle National Park and the walls of Jerusalem. It's actually quite accessible, really, and really stunning.
Yeah, it's a really magnificent place, and you can see all of the blizzard of snow just coming in here, and the
I've been going out for 20 years,
just absolutely cranking in there. So it was definitely a good trip, and I do need to edit. These are just the embedded previews, so this is as raw as it gets. But yeah, definitely need to get into that, and just going through the exercise of going through the shots that I took this year. My Lightroom catalog says I've taken 115,000 photos this year. So I've got a lot to get through. Went out to Philosopher's Falls, which is a really magnificent spot as well. Bit of an adventure out there. And then on the way back from that trip, the conditions materialized, and I actually went out to Lake Mackenzie and was able to photograph some of the dead pencil pines with the Milky Way. These are all still embedded previews as well, but I'm hoping to work on a series of these kind of images where I talk about climate change, and these are all very ancient pencil pines that were burnt in a fire in 2016, I think it was.
Were you using an aperture light for that, Lukey? What were you using?
I just put a light in behind the tree just to give it a bit of form and shape. And then, I like the symbolism of that being like the soul of the tree or something like that. And actually, obviously, it's a silhouette. And the other issue is that the lake sort of blends into the tree with that. So it was a very, very cold night. It's probably one of the more extreme trips I've done in Tassie, where it went down to about -10. And everything was freezing up, including me. And I got to a point when I was shooting this tree that I realized that if I didn't leave soon, then I was going to be hypothermic. So definitely, it's all well and good if you're walking and moving, but when you're sitting around taking photos, things cool down very, very quickly. It doesn't matter how many layers you have on. And I couldn't put my tripod back together because it was frozen solid. So I was like, okay, it's probably cold enough to leave it for tonight. But definitely want to get back and revisit that place. It's really special. Was able to also get to to Wineglass Bay and do the Freycinet circuit, which was quite special. I really enjoyed these refraction patterns in the water with the hazards behind. A very special place. Went up Mount Graham and photographed up there as well. So I've got quite a bevy of shots from the top of Mount Graham that I need to get through. Very, very specky location for photography. And then able to do some drone panos of the mountain at sunrise over Hobart. Went for a walk to Maria Island and was able to do a sunrise at Rydal Bay, which is, I think, one of the most underrated beaches in Australia in terms of its scenic beauty. It's just, I guess it's just very, very challenging to get to. It's about at least a 10-kilometer walk to get out there. E-bike again, maybe. And then was able to do a few nice little wildlife shots of some of the little critters around. Plenty of baby wombats going and little joeys and things like that. For my birthday, I was able to go to a remote island in Freycinet and get some really shots at probably my favorite shots of the year, I think, actually, from a waterfall up there, which you don't really get flowing too much in Freycinet. It's normally classed to be quite a dry sort of area. And so it was really nice to get going with that. And probably the biggest find equipment wise for me has been the little lens that's on the front of this thing. It's the Laowa 9mm lens, which is absolutely tiny. But yeah, it's a full frame 9mm rectilinear lens, which means there's very little distortion that comes from the lens. And so being able to be less than a meter from this waterfall, but yet fit the whole scene in was a huge, you really wouldn't be able to do it with equipment like without equipment like this. So that's been a bit of a game changer for me. Not everyone likes the extreme wide angle point of view, and certainly in certain situations it doesn't work, but when you have a foreground that's extremely close and you still want to fit everything else in, it really does work. And so I'm very much looking forward to working up these images as well when I finally get a chance to do so.
Yeah, you simply wouldn't have been able to shoot those with a normal wide angle lens.
Yeah, 16mm you wouldn't be able to get. You'd only either be able to choose this part of the frame or this part of the frame, but you couldn't get all of it. So there's plenty to go through there. And then we did have a pretty reasonable year with auroras. So this is a show that we had. I think it was in what's the date say on it? The 1st of November. And then a few days later, we actually had the real show, which was one that we've talked about a little bit already on the show. I was on Bruny Island, and it's almost certainly the biggest aurora in maybe 3 or 4 years that we've had in Tasmania, and I just happened to be at the right place at the right time down on Bruny Island, and also the conditions were right. We had a new moon. We had no very clear skies, and the wind was actually really just beautiful, calm working conditions as well. So was able to be in the right place and get a pretty incredible show. I was here at the neck, and then also I've shown pictures in the past also from what I was able to do from the lighthouse itself. So there's a few other trips that I was able to do, and one other that I probably should show was I haven't shown anyone yet, was when I was on South Arm, and I was able to get some bioluminescence there. That's not it there. Yeah. So, and it was a pretty reasonable show. You can see me there sort of blurred trying to stir up the water. But yeah, there was definitely a pretty, I'd never really seen bioluminescence like that before. How it sort of just was washing up against the shore was pretty incredible. And so yeah, the white balance needs work on these. These are just unedited, but definitely seeing a big bioluminescent show like that. And I guess the word didn't get out, so I sort of did have it to myself pretty well. And that was always quite nice, just to be able to enjoy such a phenomenon on your own. And yeah, I need to do something with the images now as well. But yeah, you can see that there's some potential there. So that was also a pretty cool thing to do. Yeah, so that's me in terms of my year. Very busy, and I probably will be doing a little bit more around Australia next year rather than just in Tassie itself. So it was nice to be able to base myself down here and really just see as much as I could, and yeah, have plenty to still edit and get through and show from the year. And certainly, as I mentioned, that big road trip that I did, at least 300 photos coming out of that. So there's a lot to get through there. So yeah, so it's very exciting.
Well,
So probably don't see much coming out from me, but there's plenty happening in the background. I have a bit of an issue where I can take a lot of photos, but don't have so much of an issue. I have more of an issue actually processing them and actually being able to show them. So I need to change that for next year.
Yeah, one day someone's going to have to deal with your back catalogue, Luke. You know, you'll pass away of old age, and someone will discover your hard drives.
And I've already written that down in my will, Nick, that you're going to do all of that. So yeah, I've given you the locations of where all the hard drives are, and
I've got a few of them, mate. Yeah. I've got a few of them.
Yeah. Well, you've got to change or charge your battery.
My battery's just tired. I'll just switch over to another one. Well, it's been a long show, boys.
Yeah, no, it's been great. I think we just hit around the 2 hour mark now, so we're probably pretty good to wrap up, and hopefully everyone's enjoyed seeing what a gratuitous self show of our images there. But it's definitely nice to be able to reflect on the year. And I think it's always one of those cases where you get to the end of the year, and if you don't reflect on it, you don't realize all of the amazing things that you're able to achieve. And it's really always good to have that feeling of gratitude and be really happy with what you're able to see and achieve during the year, and then use that as a springboard for the next year, and grow and move forward on what you've been able to achieve in the year prior.
Yeah, well done, all of us. I think we've done very well, and I just wanted to say that a lot of work does go into this show, and most of that work is done by Luke and by Paul, and less so by me. So I just wanted to acknowledge Luke in particular. Thanks for your efforts and hard work in keeping this show going, because without your motivation, I think we would sometimes slack off. Particularly me, I tend to lose some motivation from time to time, and Paul also.
Paul's. Yeah.
Your ability to draw in guests from everywhere and put together things,
and the blurbs, beautiful blurbs you write as well.
So both of you have put in a lot more work than me, and I mean it's partially my own personal situation, which makes it a bit more difficult. But
well, you're the pretty one, Nick. So that's what you bring to the table.
Yes, indeed. But I did want to acknowledge that really that you guys are the driving force behind the show. And thanks very much for all your efforts during the year. And yes, it's I think now 72 shows in, we've got a back catalogue of some amazing guests and locations and photography and discussions. And it's grown from the initial 6 shows that we thought it would be, and who knows what happens next year. I think it will change what we do, because I think particularly Paul and Luke will be busy off doing other things, and the opportunities might not be quite the same. And they, of course, both have to earn money from their photography work to support their lives. So it might be that things change a little bit, but we're not sure. We don't actually know.
I will do our very best to keep it happening. And the great thing about what we do is that we can do what we do remotely. Everyone lives on Zoom these days anyway, so there's no major dramas there. I think it probably. I think also it might be pre-recording a little bit more than
we're starting to get a lot more international guests, which means we can be a little bit more flexible about that kind of thing as well. And We haven't discussed this personally, but I think 100 is a nice round number, boys, to aim for. So
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That's in my head. I don't know if you agree, but I'm happy to gun for that.
Oh, I mean, there's no reason why we need to consider about any numbers. We just keep on doing what we do and see how it goes. So, but yeah, it's certainly be nice to get to that nice round number and have a good celebration. But yeah, there's plenty of great guests that we have on our list. There's plenty of topics that we can still talk about. There's other things like doing critique shows and those other sort of shows that we have done a few of, but we can do a lot more of as well. So, and I know Paul is pretty much an expert judge. So there's plenty of things we can do, maybe even with competitions or other aspects as well. So there's more than enough to keep us going.
Feel free to reach out and give us some thoughts. And it's always nice to get some feedback as well in any way, shape or form.
Yep.
Feel free, like we're doing this for the community. So if there's a way we can serve it somehow with certain issues or genres or people you think really who need to be heard or deserve to be heard, then just let us know.
Yeah, there'll definitely be a survey coming out where people that are subscribed to the mailing list will have an opportunity to be able to do that. And if you haven't subscribed, you can just go to subscribe.tlp.show as a URL in your browser, and that'll take you to the subscription page for our mailing list, and you can sign up there and you'll get advanced notifications of our shows. And when I advance, sometimes it's only the same day, but at least and opportunity to also provide feedback and see what other previous shows have been. Another thing that we'll probably look at doing next year is also running some workshops in Tasmania, both Paul and myself. So we'll be in touch through the mailing list on that as well for those sort of opportunities that might come our way. So yeah, very exciting year ahead. Plenty to do, plenty to see, and plenty to talk about. So, and we really want to overall, finally, after thanking everybody else, we want to thank you, our viewers. Some of you are there very steadfastly every week in, week out, and we really do appreciate you tuning in. That's what we're doing this for. We do it for ourselves, of course, as well as a little selfish motivation, just because we really enjoy talking to the guests that we have. But obviously, we're doing it for you as well, and we're very much happy for you guys tuning in every week and joining our chats and our talks, and may it long continue.
Excellent. Well done, Luke. Well done, Paul. Have a good break.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Yeah, have a great break. Have a very happy new year, and we'll be back online from the 12th of January with Mika Boynton joining us, which will be an absolutely brilliant show. Hearing all about her, and I think I haven't spoken about it, but I'm sure it makes more sense to do that as a photographer's portrait type show as well, where we can really delve into her life and also her photography and what inspires her and makes her tick. So very excited about that, and very excited about having a break too and getting away and doing a bit of hiking. Gents, maybe you could just quickly say what you're going to get up to over the break. It might be interesting for our viewers.
Well, I have got leave coming up, so I will do a trip here and there, probably based in my car, but camping and doing day walks, which is the way I've sort of rolled recently. It's the easiest way for me to get the most out of the shorter amount of time that I might have. And of course, into Christmas and the New Year, I'll be spending time with my family and hopefully heading down to the shack where my sisters will be coming down from the mainland, or the two that are up there, and hopefully I will be able to spend a bit of time with them down at the shack and just enjoy a bit of family life.
Beautiful. Polly?
Yeah, interesting for me. I was planning on spending the entire summer in New Zealand with my family, who I haven't seen for almost 2 years, and that's still incredibly problematic and difficult. And so I'm a little bit not lost, but I'm a bit challenged by that, and I'm trying to keep myself busy actually by taking on an exhibition. I'm going to run an exhibition in January and through to February for 3 weeks down in Woodbridge.
Awesome.
At a community art lounge down there, and I'm going to do it with a good friend of mine, Tom. And the idea is, I guess, for a long time since I've done a show just for the joy, where I just want to celebrate what I do, that I'm not in a high-end gallery with all this super pressure and this and that. And I just felt like I needed and would really appreciate having an opportunity to just for self-expression and just for the joy of it, and share with people I know about. Most of my exhibitions have been around the mainland and other places and big venues, and I haven't really exhibited here for a long time. And I have a large body of work, and actually a lot of it's from my print awards from the OPP and the NZOPP that's been gathering dust and sitting here, and it's beautiful work that I'm really proud of. So that's going to be part of it, and I'm going to print a lot of new work with myself doing the printing, and my good buddy Andrew helping put it together. I'll be back down in Bruni to enjoy some time. I want to get some waves. I want to stretch my legs. I haven't done a decent walk for a little while now, and yeah, so I've kind of got a bit of space, and also I might be working with a good mate Ben Aldridge to put a website together. I had a chat to him, and he's in theory thinking about working together with me. So we're just having a conversation about that, because
it depends on like his will to live, really, if he wants to get involved. Yeah,
totally up to him. I've got no expectations, but if it's something positive or empowering, and obviously I'm going to pay him as well if he wants to get involved with that, it'd be great, because I'm 12 years overdue for a site that remotely reflects the caliber of work that I do and the breadth of it. So I'm looking forward to having a bit more of a authentic presence online in that regard that represents what I do.
Sounds great. I'm hopefully going for a hike into the southwest over the next week or so, and have another job that I'm doing, which is really a secret squirrel film project, which I'm pretty excited about, and then heading back to Adelaide see my family in the Barossa Valley, and then come back and run a workshop and go up to Bristow, see some lavender, go away for New Year's to a nice little island, and then have a couple of visitors coming across, including Dower Dykstra, Dex, our graphic designer, which I can't wait to catch up with him, and hopefully we can all have a dinner or something like that, just to thank him for all the work that he does for us. And then get my brother's coming over with his little baby who I haven't met, which I've had since COVID. So that'll be really fantastic too, to catch up with those guys. So yeah, it's very, very busy, exciting period, as it is, I'm sure, for all of you. So thanks for letting us have a bit of a break and enjoying some of those activities and things like that. And we will see you back.
I just have one more thing. Like, I just realized there is one amazing thing I'm doing that I'd like to just share. Is I'm actually going out for 10 days in the Tscharke wilderness with 15 men to do really deep personal development work and continue on with my Men with Heart project. And I'm pretty excited about that. I was a little bit sad when I heard Dow was coming down the exact same time, and I was like, oh, because I love hanging out with that beautiful man. But yeah, stay tuned for the results on that one. And I'm actually going for a meeting tonight about that whole project, so I'm quite excited about that.
Awesome, brilliant. Oh, good stuff, Paul. Well, yeah, it's a very important work that you do with those guys, and I know personally get a lot out of it, but also just help to show the wider community, you know, the benefit of those kind of groups and what they can do for people's lives. So it's very important work that you do there. So you know, all the best with that. That sounds brilliant.
Yeah, it'll distract me a bit from not being with my family, but
yeah, no, that's right, and hopefully that'll all settle down so you can get over there and yeah, get it back into your fish and chops and whatever else it is that you need.
Yeah, we must have my fish and chops, bro.
Beautiful. All right, well, I think this is really goodbye now. So thanks for your 2021, everybody, and may 2022 be everything you hope it to be, and we will see you bright-eyed on the 12th of January. So until then, good evening, good night, and we'll see you then.
Merry Christmas.
Thanks, gentlemen. Merry Christmas, everyone.
Bye.